Go ahead and take a seat. Welcome to the ARC. My name is Scott Kratz. I am the Senior Vice President of Building Bridges Across the River, and Founding Director of the 11th Street Bridge Park, which is a project of building bridges across the river. For those who have been here before, welcome back. For those who've not been here before, the ARC is run by Building Bridges Across the River. We designed, built, and managed 3, soon to be 4 different buildings on campus. And we have 14 nonprofits that are all co-located to better serve the community. So you've seen out front our construction. That's soon to be our 4th building. We're bringing together the 2 different campuses for Washington School for Girls to bring a one-campus solution for over 100 amazing young women who are going to change the world. So I'm super excited about that. They're to be opening next fall. We also run a network of 7 urban farms, all in Southeast DC, the Skyland Workforce Center, and our largest project to date, which is the 11th Street Bridge Park, which you're going to be learning more about today from our Deputy Director, Jessica. So today's discussion is all about how we build a more equitable, resilient, and inclusive Ward 8. We do this at Building Bridges in many different ways, including stewardship of our farms. It's a great backdrop where you can see our farm here at the ARC. We also have 6 other farms in collaboration with communities of faith and nonprofits around DC. And at its heart, and you'll be hearing more about this from Jessica, but at its heart, the 11th Street Bridge Park, one of our key four goals is to re-engage residents with the Anacostia River and inspire the next generation of river stewards. So we're up for I think a rich discussion today. With that, though, I'd like to introduce up to the podium a very good friend, Victor Barola, who is the lead community impact and sustainability specialist at Wells Fargo. Please welcome Victor up to the podium. Thanks, Victor.
I went to the back because I didn't want to be the one kicking the water. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Scott and Jessica and team, for hosting us here at the ARC for this important conversation exploring environmental justice east of the river. As Scott said, I'm Victor Barola, Vice President of Philanthropy and Community Impact for Greater Washington, D.C. for Wells Fargo. On behalf of Wells Fargo, I want to extend congratulations to Building Bridges Across the River, Ward 8 Woods Conservancy, Friends of Anacostia Park, and the Anacostia Watershed Society for today's event and your partnership in Ward 8 and throughout the region. Your efforts make our community healthier and cleaner through your promotion of sustainable and inclusive programs. Now, we want to recognize the importance of your work and the resources needed to continue to expand your efforts. And so therefore, on behalf of Wells Fargo and our employees, I'm honored to announce a $100,000 grant to Building Bridges Across the River for the coalition to continue its important work. Through this grant, each of the aforementioned organizations will provide sustainable and inclusive programs with the goal of promoting a healthier and cleaner space for Ward 8 residents and visitors. Wells Fargo will continue to evolve and play an essential role in meeting the changing needs of our customers, clients, and communities in the transition to a lower carbon economy and supporting resilient communities for future generations. Thank you for your partnership and the positive impact Building Bridges Across the River, Ward 8 Woods Conservancy, Friends of Anacostia Park, and the Anacostia River Watershed Society make in our community. So we're not here to listen to me. We're here to hear about the efforts of these amazing nonprofits. And so to start us off, it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator and environmental reporter, Jacob Fenson, who will lead the conversation. Thank you.
All right, well, yeah, thank you. I'm just going to grab this microphone and call up the rest of the panel here. It's very stuck in here. Sorry about that. So in no particular order, LaShante Moore is with Friends of Anacostia Park, and here to talk about their work. Jessica Smith Lennon is with 11th Street Bridge Park and building bridges across the river. Chris Williams is with Anacostia Watershed Society, and Nathan Harrington with Ward 8 Woods. So I'm going to find a seat here as well, and if you all can just grab the microphone that is next to your seat. We have the right number? Yes, I'm actually really excited to talk to you all. I've interviewed, if not every one of you individually, all of the groups that you work with, and I have very fond memories of putting on waders and looking for mussels with the Anacostia Watershed Society, going out, meeting the park stewards with the Ward 8 Woods, and hearing about the great work you do with invasive plants, Friends of Anacostia Park, meeting some of your core members and just being really moved by their stories of sort of restoring the park and hearing about the restoration, the personal restoration that has brought. And with the 11th Street Bridge Park, I remember actually being in this building, or I don't remember if it was the other building, but at one of your home buyers clubs, and meeting a woman who was here to try to buy a house, and she later for a story took me out to go out looking at houses with her and her little kid, and so I feel like I've gotten to see the work that you all do on the ground, and seen sort of some of the changes that you've brought over the years. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk a little bit more about your organizations and your work. And I don't know who's controlling the thing, but
For a second.
Just, I think you might need the mic too.
oh wait, do you have a microphone?
Gotcha, sorry.
We're doing this totally unrehearsed.
Oops. Do I have this working? Okay, there we go. Is support with the clicker by chance? It's not working. So while that's being troubleshooted, I'll go ahead and start. So just imagine things are changing behind me. But nonetheless, I am Jessica Smith Lennon, and I am the Deputy Director with the 11th Street Bridge Park. And as Scott has already mentioned, the 11th Street Bridge Park is one of the projects of building bridges across the river. And I do encourage many of you to check out and learn more about our different community spaces that are around Southeast. But today, of course, I'm here to specifically speak about the 11th Street Bridge Park and its community-led efforts towards environmental changes, including making it greener and more resilient. Ward 8. Are we working? Great. So I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead in that for time's sakes. One of the things when I first came across our park goals for the actual infrastructure piece of it, they seemed kind of disjointed and they didn't really fully connect. After being with the team and doing the work, I realized that all of these things really do impact our overall wellness, our overall health. And so even though the environmental piece and economic may seem kind of far apart, those things have an impact on residents and their ability to have longevity within life and their quality of life here. So today, I'm not only going to talk about the infrastructure, but also our current investments into the community. So here, a lot of people are familiar with this, but this layout here shows some of the intentional spaces that the community have given ideas around to create things that impact the environmental space. So we have the area where you can actually engage and learn about the Anacostia River, which like the kayak launch there in Orange, as well as the Environmental Education Center, which will be led by Anacostia Watershed Society. But we also have in the built infrastructure the like pollinator meadows, which actually improve the air quality, which is important and in regards to having cleaner air and those type of things. The waterfront plantings and tree plantings and wetlands have all been really thought out and been very intentional to how does that affect the health of the actual human and not just beautifying the infrastructure piece itself. As I mentioned, the Anacostia Watershed Society will be running the Environmental Education Center, which will help steward future river keepers and encourage residents to continue to learn and engage about the health of the river and making it swimmable and fishable. There's a closer picture of the kayak launch. There will also be buildings, and our infrastructure pieces are sustainable as well as solar powered in many of the areas. The ability to capture 100% rainwater so that that's not wasted, and it also, once again, that goes back to the health of the river, but also the air that we breathe. Going to planting the native trees and having those within the park itself. And I don't have time to dive into it, but I do encourage you to look into the Ward 8 canopy and how the disparities from east of the river versus west. So I just got the 1 minute mark. Pollinator garden, we talked about that. Urban agriculture, we will have also on the park to create additional food access. So that work is coming, and we're working on that. However, we've already started taking action, and that action has been led by our equitable development plan, which was developed through many meetings with our community and residents. And recently, we created a new equitable development plan by adding on the health and wellness. And here are the strategies for that. And with that, we have already started to implement a number of these pieces. Once again, these go way deeper, and I could probably spend about 30 minutes to an hour on each of these. But we've been looking at working with residents who have identified air conditioning as an issue within older apartments and things like that. And so instead of waiting for housing or different groups to take action, we have been able to go ahead and be able to provide certain residents with air conditioning this past summer, and we're hoping to expand that pilot in the we're actually working on that now, but we're hoping to implement that before the next summer. The condo rehabilitation is an opportunity for us to implement to take some of the older condos that long-term residents have lived in and make those more sustainable, implementing electric and a number of different things that would truly improve not only the environment but also their quality of life. The workout series in the park is focused on the individual and improving their health, getting people connected to outdoors. And then our community leadership empowerment workshop this year was focused on creating environmental advocates and for them learning the challenges, learning the different things that needed to be addressed, but not only learning, but how do you navigate the political process to make change. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. If you want to learn more about the Bridge Park plots, please come to the Taste of the Harvest, shameless plug, which is October 19th, and that'll be a great time to explore that more. Thank you.
Well, that's okay. I'll just use this one. Hi, my name's Chris Williams. I have the honor of being the president and CEO of the Anacostia Watershed Society. We've been working for 35 years. This is our 35th anniversary this year, conserving and restoring the Anacostia watershed through field restoration programs, policy work at all levels of government, education programs at all educational levels, including adults, and volunteer programs, and outreach programs to bring folks down to the river. The mission of the Anacostia Watershed Society is to conserve and restore the Anacostia watershed for all who live here and for future generations. Now, in most talks I give, I sort of parse that out and talk about what each part of that mission statement means, but I'm only going to concentrate on one today because of time, and that is that we do this for all who live here. We're a conservation organization, so we talk a lot about wildlife and habitats and wild rice. I can bore you for hours about wild rice conservation. Mussels, we love our mussels. And so we are working for all of that life, all those plants and animals and habitats that live here. But when we say all who live here, we're also emphasizing the people who live here. An important part of our mission is conserving and restoring the watershed for the benefit of the local communities along the river, and to ensure that those communities aren't left out as the river recovers. We feel like, and I think we all can agree, that it would be a terrible injustice if the very communities who've been here and have lived through all the environmental injustice and other injustices along the river aren't the same communities that benefit as the river recovers, and that's incredibly important to us. We also understand at a very deep level how the fate of the Anacostia River is entwined with the fate of the people who live along its banks. And both those stories of the environmental injustices that have been heaped upon the river and the social and racial injustices that have been heaped upon the people who live along the river is too long a story for me to tell in my 5 minutes. But just to emphasize a couple things, the river has suffered from environmental degradation and environmental impacts, ever since Captain John Smith sailed up the river in 1612. It has suffered from sediment pollution as the forests have been cleared. It suffered from industrial pollution of industries have grown up along the river. It suffered from organic pollutants as sewage has been dumped into the river mercilessly for decades from a growing city. And it's suffered from heaps of garbage that have been dumped into the river or flow into the river for these many years, so that the Anacostia River is one of only 3 rivers in the country that is regulated by the federal government for trash. So this river has been heavily impacted. At the same time, through a bunch of forces that I don't have time to describe, but you probably know better than I do, including economic injustices, including really racially discriminatory urban renewal processes because of highway projects and highway building. Black communities were pushed down to the river and across the river into what's now Ward 7 and Ward 8. And so there's been this collision between environmental injustice, environmental degradation and racial injustice, which is part of what we need to grapple with. It's vital that we grapple with that as we grapple with these environmental issues along the river, which is why we phrase our mission that way and why we include in our strategic plan not just plants and animals and fish and a healthy river ecosystem, although that's incredibly important to what we do, but also to doing what we can as a modestly sized conservation organization to contribute to the righting of these historical wrongs and bringing justice to these historic injustices. And I'm looking forward to talking a little more about that as we move through the panel. Well, thanks very much.
Morning, everyone. Hopefully the clicker works for me. Am I going the wrong way? Oh, here we go. Good morning again. My name is LaShante Moore. I am the core director for Friends of Anacostia Park. Friends of Anacostia Park is the official philanthropic partner of the National Park Service for National Capital Parks East. Our mission, we enrich the lives of DC residents by preserving Anacostia Park and connecting surrounding communities to its restoration. In our mission, we envision a clean Anacostia Park that supports a vibrant ecosystem and the wellness of nearby communities. And we do that through restorative park engagement. So we focus on mental health, physical health, and social health. And as you can see, the different categories of things that fall under each tab. So through mental health, respite, wellness programs, coping crafts, service and stewardship, physical health, hiking, walking, biking, skating, sports and recreations, and social health by events, cookouts, fellowship, and fishing. I feel like that ties into environmental justice, because we definitely have to start with the people. With Friends of Anacostia Park, we choose to start on a smaller level because environmental justice can be a big chunk to bite out of. And when things seem so huge, it's harder to get a grasp on where you are as a person in the grand scheme of things. And so we try to bring it down to a personal level, to engage our community first by showing and teaching them and illuminating a pathway that the environment belongs to them and it's something that they should take ownership of. And by doing that down at the park, they take those practices back to their individual communities. So that's why we think it's important. That's what we call the restorative park engagement, because we try to attack it from those 3 different aspects, because we believe that that's the best way to get a buy-in from our community members. Oh, wrong way, sorry. And so we have those 3 buckets that we focus on as we're doing our engagement with the communities. And then we do that through our different programming. As on this slide here, you see just a small example, because we're in the park daily and we're doing things that we don't necessarily advertise as events or as come down and see us, because we're at the park every day. We're seeing community members at their highest and at their lowest, but we celebrate restorative park engagement through these different programs. So we have our Nature Fest. We do that every spring, and that's more geared towards children and families. While the kids are out of school for spring break, we have them come down and engage the park. It's a learning opportunity, but also just a fun opportunity. It's just a chance for the kids to get out and see what their park has to offer. We do a lot of work with returning citizens. We truly believe that just because someone had a hiccup in their life does not mean that they can't contribute back positively into their community. And so we are proud to support that kind of work. In the wintertime, we do realize that, a lot of people don't want to be in the park because it's cold, and, no one really wants to be outside when it's freezing cold, but the park is still there. It's still beautiful. We want to encourage people to use the park all year round, so we do our winter wellness workshop and our Super Friends Saturday. We come out and we do winter-friendly activities and projects with our community members. We do our Junior Wrangler Angler program, which introduces the kids, to the river in a fun and interactive way. They come out, they learn how to fish, and then they become a Junior Angler Wrangler, which is, again, another way to promote ownership over the river where you live. Of course, Late Skate. I know everybody here knows about Late Skate because you guys all come out and enjoy every last Saturday of the month, June through October. We have one coming up on Friday, shameless plug, thank you. So please come out on Saturday. And then right now we're right in the middle of our teen respite program, where we engage teens ages 14 to 18 in the after-school program. It's a respite program because we do realize that though there are young adults, there are a lot of things that's put on their shoulders. So we want to give them an opportunity to come out to the park and just relax, just be able to focus on their own mental health, their own well-being. We feel like by doing that, it gives them the chance to decompress from the stress of the world and use the environment as a way to do that. I'm very happy to be here on the panel today to talk about environmental justice. Again, I believe that environmental justice starts with the person, and if we want to make a big change and take a big chunk out of it, we have to start with the individual. So that's what Friends of Anacostia Park likes to focus on. So thank you.
Scott called it. He knew that would All right, good morning, everybody. I am Nathan Harrington. I'm founder and director of Ward 8 Woods Conservancy. How do I get my slideshow?
By the way.
I don't know what to do. Can I pull up my slideshow?
Yeah, it's
Oh, okay.
In the meantime, we can all sort of interpret what this shape is. Africa?
Okay, here we go. All right, so I have lived here in Ward 8 for 15 years, just about 10 blocks from here in Congress Heights, and one of the first things that I did in those early years was just explore, and I saw that there was so much beautiful forested land here in Ward 8 that was set aside, and there were huge trees, and there were steep hills with views across the city, and there were the remains of Civil War forts, and there were these beautiful meandering streams. But I also saw severe neglect. Like, I saw more trash than I had ever seen before, and there was this visceral sense of, like, something's wrong here. This is the nature of beauty juxtaposed with all of this trash pollution. I saw residents who were doing their best over many years to try to address that and maintain the woods across from where they lived, but a lot of them were saying, man, this is too much. Like, I'm tired of doing this myself. We need help. I was at first resistant to starting a new nonprofit. We know that there's already a lot. They kind of compete for funding. I'm not originally I grew up in Rockville, Maryland. My background's not really representative of the 80,000 people in Ward 8, so that maybe I'm not really the right person to be doing this. But pretty much everyone I talked to said, you know what, the work that you're talking about doing is important, but my organization, the existing ones, we can't do it. You can't push it off onto us. You got to do it yourself. So it's like, all right, I guess that's what I'll do. In the early years, I was leading volunteer efforts under auspices of Congress Heights Neighborhood Association. Philip Pennell, some of you know, was one of the people who really encouraged me. And we started having volunteer events, and we got a ton of work done. It was really exciting, but most of the people who were coming to volunteer were not from Ward 8. And the people who lived in the neighborhoods while we were working would usually come out and thank us for what we were doing, and then they would ask if we were hiring. And so after years of telling people, sorry, we don't have money, we're not hiring, but you're welcome to volunteer, and them usually saying, well, that's great, but I really have a family to support, and they're going to be mad if they hear I'm working for free. I was like, you know what, there's more here than we're ever going to get done just with volunteers, and if we want to involve the people who are most impacted by this, we need to meet them where they are, and their most urgent need is for income and employment. So that was the genesis of the Park Steward program. It started out in 2018 with a grant from DC Department of the Environment. This is our mission. Ward 8 Woods takes care of woods in Ward 8. We try to enhance the health, the beauty, and the ecological health and the public enjoyment. So increasing the health and beauty, that's why we've focused the last 6 years on remediating trash and invasive species. I don't mean to discount the contribution of volunteers. I will never turn away a volunteer. But if you think about it, we don't rely on volunteers to cut the grass in our parks. We don't rely on volunteers to empty the trash cans. So why, when it comes to trying to clean up the trash that's spread into the woods, when it comes to trying to prevent our trees from being killed and smothered by invasive species, why do we rely on volunteers to do that? I think we're kind of implying that it's not that important, because if it were, we would be investing in professional crews to do that work the same way we do with so many other things. So this is just a map of some of the areas where we work. We are here in Oxen Run. Oxen Run is complicated because some of it is federal parkland, some of it is owned by DC Parks and Recreation. Some of it gets used a lot, some of it is very remote and not used. You can see Shepherd Parkway, that's a long, narrow corridor along 295. Just as I was becoming involved in this, I found out that they were going to be cutting down 8 acres of woods at Shepherd Parkway to build a highway. I thought that was the kind of thing that happened a lot back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. I thought we were wiser than that now. I thought we were about preserving tree canopy and environmental justice and all of this. But Department of Homeland Security said, oh, we need this for our headquarters. We need people to be able to get to our campus without straight from the highway without going in the neighborhood, so the woods have to go. And Park Service said, all right, well, we're going to get some mitigation funds and we're going to use this to try to improve the condition of the remaining 179 acres. And we're still kind of waiting to see the results of that. Suitland Parkway. That's a highway. It has bad traffic, people race, there's crashes, all bad stuff associated with that. But it's also more than 200 acres of woods along either side that not many people were thinking about as an environmental resource or as a place where people could recreate and enjoy nature. Belongs to DC Department of Transportation, and they were basically saying, well, it's just a highway corridor. We don't want people using it for bird watching or anything like that. And we're like, wait a minute, why not? Every little piece of green space in Northwest has a sign and a trail going through it, and why should it be different over here? And then up there you can see Fort Stanton and Anacostia Park. The last 2 winters, Ward 8 Woods has done joint projects with Friends of Anacostia Park to remediate trash and invasive species in the wooded areas there. And then you can see how that Fort Circle corridor that starts at the south with Fort Stanton extends into Ward 7, Fort Davis, Fort DuPont, Fort Chapin, Fort Mahan. So we've started bringing some attention to those areas. Also, it's not shown on this map, but that big black line is Southern Avenue. South and east of it is Prince George's County. And Oxen Run and Shepherd Parkway, Greenway corridors also extend into Prince George's County. So we've started bringing some attention to those areas as well. And I think I'm out of time. Thank you.
I think you've got a working mic there. Does everyone have a microphone that works?
Oh, that one's mine.
I already have one.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you all for those introductions. And you all kind of touched on a little bit your work in environmental justice, but I wanted to start out by just asking, what do you think is the most pressing issue in terms of environmental justice in Ward 8 right now? And anyone can jump in. Yeah, Jessica.
I'll start. So going back to what was said regarding the individual, and I think the shifting the mindset is where we kind of also have to start, because for a number of communities, an environmentalist was more so kind of focused on someone who had spare time. It wasn't something that was relatable to all groups of people. And so I think when we bring these different causes and we talk about going into the woods and going into the forest and those type of things, it seems foreign. It's why would we do that? Why is that important when I have competing issues? And so we have to begin to shift the mindset from this is a recreational interest to this actually impacts my longevity of life, it impacts my health, it impacts my family's health, it impacts the quality of air that my child breathes, and which could eventually lead to asthma if it's not improved. All of these things impact the actual individual, and so I think we have to really start making a shift so that there's more support and openness to some of those changes.
Yeah, it's kind of like what you were saying about people volunteering versus needing to support their family, but also caring about the woods across the street.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that they're the most pressing necessarily, but the environmental justice issues that Ward 8 Woods focuses on are basically 3 things. First of all, trash pollution. We know that there's a lot of littering, and it can be tempting to sort of blame the people who do it. Man, what's wrong with people? Why don't they care about this? But there are all these structural factors, such as just the way our economy is structured. You can't really buy anything without producing waste. There's single-use plastic everywhere. In some areas, we don't have enough trash cans. We don't have, our systems for recycling could be a lot better. A lot of the apartment buildings don't have good waste disposal, so the dumpsters are overflowing, and that's why people are throwing stuff into the woods. Invasive species are another one, so we're lucky to have a lot of trees. There's a lot of effort going into planting new trees, but we're losing thousands of old mature trees every year because they're being smothered by invasive vines. And also we're losing a lot of trees to deforestation. In Ward 8, there are all of these privately owned forest patches that belong to the absentee investors. They've been neglected for years. You know, they attract dumping and crime. I reach out to the owners, they ignore me. They're just waiting for the right developer to come along to offer the right amount of money so they can put up townhouses. And then you show up one day and all the trees have been cut down. DC has a tree protection law that's supposed to prevent that from happening, but it's not working quite the way it's supposed to. Just yesterday, when I was driving around, I saw another place where about probably 50 to 100 trees had been cut down. So we need to really look at that, because we're not going to preserve or increase our tree canopy if we allow that to keep happening. We're not going to be able to mitigate the flood risk and the heat islands and all of that.
It's difficult to pick out the most pressing because there are so many. There's sort of the immediate and the urgent, and then there's sort of the longer term and the urgent. There are issues of making sure that when folks turn on their tap, there's not lead in the water. There's issues of local air pollution because of traffic patterns and everything else. So there are some real visceral environmental issues that affect people every day that really need to be at the top of the list. But also at the top of the list, there's some of these longer term, sort of more pervasive issues like climate change, which is going to aggravate the two things I just talked about. And the issue of heat islands was mentioned. That's going to get more intense as temperatures go up. We've been seeing in the last few summers a pretty dramatic increase in heat advisory days, which are not only dangerous because of heat, but because of the impacts on air quality. And these things are all interrelated, because one of the answers to heat islands is tree canopy, the types of things that Woods works on and that we certainly support. And then there's sort of the big issues, as climate change really takes hold, and I'm not saying the others aren't big, I mean sort of in terms of scale is what I'm talking about. You see evidence that the river is going to rise as climate change takes hold. High tides are going to get a lot higher. What does that mean for flooding? What does that mean for potentially floodwaters getting into water supplies? So there are real water security issues, both security from flooding and security of water supplies and water quality, that are going to potentially impact east of the river, because east of the river is so sort of historically under-resourced and unfavored that these things are going to hit with greater impact unless we move to deal with them right now.
I agree with all three of the panelists up here, but it goes right back to the pressing issue for me is the people, and it's because and the people and the knowledge. Like, yes, this information is easily found and people can do their research and you can find, like, this is the problem, the heat islands, the climate change. But when you say those words to folks whose main issue is how am I going to feed my kid tonight, it's like one ear and out the other. And so I think the most pressing issue is the buy-in from the community and being able to assimilate the knowledge in a way that's accessible to the folks that you're trying to get to be more involved. I've just a quick about background on myself. I'm a former AmeriCorps member. When I was 19 or 20 years old, I joined Earth Conservation Corps. It's a nonprofit based here in DC, east of the river. One of the first all African American AmeriCorps programs in the country. And their mission is the restoration of the Anacostia River, which is a great mission, and they did a good job of mitigating a lot of issues along the river, or at least played a great hand in it. But when I joined the program at 19, 20, I could care less about the river. I did not care. I grew up beside the river. I grew up around the park. I, of course, heard all of the river's dirty. There's bodies. There's this, there's that. Like, all of those things. But, again, it didn't even register with me. I joined that program because they offered support services. And so I feel like if you want if the pressing issue is getting the knowledge to people and you want a way to get it to them in a way that is understandable and accessible to them, then you have to mitigate the block. And the block is what are the issues they're facing right then and there. If you clear out the issues or at least try to address the issues that they're facing right then and there, it makes it easier for them to be open. Because why would I want to clean your river when I can barely get my house clean or I can barely feed my kids? It's not an issue for me. So I think the most pressing issue in environmental justice is the dissemination of the knowledge of the issues to the people who it matters to the most.
Yeah, and that you kind of answered my next question, but I wanted to ask a little bit more like, DC, as we all know, is a city of great economic disparity. So here in Ward 8, the average household income is like a third of that in the wealthiest neighborhood. It's also more than 80% Black. So I wanted to ask, like, how do those issues of, economic disparity, racial injustice intersect with some of these environmental issues that you all have been talking about? And you just kind of were talking about that directly, but
Okay, just to add on a little bit, and I'll let everyone else answer. I think Nate hit the nail on the head when he said that we shouldn't expect for people just to want to volunteer or to have the time and resources to volunteer to do that. I know at Friends, with our core members, we try to pay a livable wage because we know that people have to eat. People have to take care of their families. People have to be able to take care of their children and just live. The things that folks take for granted who are making a livable wage, we forget that there are some people who just can't afford those things. So at Friends, while you're a core member with us, we pay a livable wage, so that can be one less worry off of your plate. And so you don't have to worry about how you're going to feed your kids tonight or how you're going to pay your bills. And since you're not worried about that, that's our time to punch in, the importance of this river, the importance of being out in nature, the importance of taking this back to your families and to your communities. But we have to address the economic disparities that the people of Ward 7 and 8 face every day. Again, I agree with Nate. It's not fair to ask folks to come out and volunteer to do a job that if it was somewhere else, people were getting paid to do. And it's not fair to shame them into saying, oh, your neighborhood needs to be clean and you should be doing this, you should care. But why should I care more about the trash in the woods than I care about what's happening right here in my own living room? So.
I mean, besides like just, that idea of hiring people from the community and doing this work, does the work you do have an impact on sort of the wider issues of well-being, economic well-being in the community, beyond what you guys are talking about like hiring people directly?
One of the things that, starting with what has already been mentioned, like once you take care of that piece of the individual and allowing for those basic needs to be cared for and to be able to be provided, people can start to think about other things. And when you learn and you actually see the impact of the river, the park, and being there, and like through those different programs and things, then you have the opportunity to become passionate. You have an opportunity to start new interests. And a lot of times when people are passionate and interested in something, they talk about it. And when they talk about it, that spreads the word. And then you take that another level, people become protective of things that they're passionate about. And when they're able to become protective, they learn how to advocate. They learn how to take and gather other support for it. And so I really, for me, I really do think that that human experience is the key to really making a lot of the changes that are needed. It impacts the economic piece. It impacts all of those. The workforce development has to be there. The access to food has to be there. All of these things impact the humanity of folks. It impacts their ability to be able to have joy and to actually enjoy and spend time in the park. If I don't have the time to relax and to actually think, and because I'm so busy working all the time, then you don't have a chance to find your passions and to become advocates. It becomes a little bit more difficult. So I really think, like you said, starting with that individual, it does lead to those opportunities of economic change and to addressing some of the racial disparities that have been intentionally placed over over time.
One of my frustrations is that almost every day when we're out in the woods working, people will stop me and ask if we're hiring. And so every time, and we're budgeted currently for 6 people. Actually, thanks to the Wells Fargo grant, we were able to go from 5 to 6. So that that's awesome. But to fill that one slot, I had to pick out of about 20 people who had applied since we had the last opening. And I think people want to work for us for a few reasons. One is that we pay significantly more than minimum wage. Another is that we offer transit benefits, we offer some free meals, we offer paid training, and people like to work in their own community. Usually you don't have to get on the train and go uptown to serve other people in another part of town. You get to actually do work that's visible here. In some ways, like trash on the ground seems like a superficial thing that doesn't directly affect people's health or well-being, but there is research showing that it affects the way people feel in a space. Spaces feel less safe and less desirable when there is that pollution on the ground, and that can actually affect people's mental health. So it is it's sort of one step or one piece of the puzzle to improving people's health and well-being, I believe.
A couple things. One, one of the reasons that we do what we do is because the Anacostia River is a resource that communities should be able to take advantage of, and that resource has been denied by all this historic pollution. We talk to folks in the community, and a lot of elderly folks tell us about how they used to swim in the river and how they used to fish in the river, but their kids can't do that. The grandkids can't do that because of the condition of the river. So there is a benefit to the community that they perceive, that the community perceives that they don't have anymore, that they would like to have again. Getting more directly to some of these issues, AWS has learned a lot from Friends and from BBAR and from Ward 8 Woods about this sort of thing. We're working on, for example, we do a lot of community meetings and we do a lot of volunteer events, and we're working on developing a program and budgeting accordingly so we can compensate folks when they come to our meetings and when they give a talk or when they participate in a volunteer activity. We can't hire everybody who comes out to help us. I wish we could. We could use the help. But what we can do is try to compensate people for their time when they give their time to us. We're also looking very closely at how our programs can ultimately lead to job creation. One of the things we look at, for example, is we're very much in the wetlands restoration business. And wetlands restoration, when you get right down to it, when you're actually getting out on the ground to do it, it requires engineers, it requires laborers, it requires heavy machinery operators, it requires designers. And so when we're thinking about how to promote wetlands restoration, this is just one example, we're also thinking about how we can use our approach to that to create jobs, and then how do we follow the example of BBAR and others in figuring out how to make sure those jobs go to local people. It's a very nascent program for us. We don't have a lot of results to report, I'll be honest with you, but that's the way our thinking is turning when we're thinking about restoration work on the ground.
Yeah, I've been out in some of those wetlands that you're working in, and forested wetlands, and the kind of, you were talking about wild rice. Like, it's a lot of work. There's a lot of labor that goes into those projects. I wanted to ask you all. I mean, I'm sure you have talked to people, talked to residents, neighbors, or read about stories where people are wary of changes in the neighborhood because they feel like it is kind of going hand in hand with gentrification and displacement. Whether it's like a bike lane or a dog park or an environmental cleanup, people feeling like that is going to lead to people being pushed out of the neighborhood, with good reason. Like, if you look around DC, this is the city's been changing very quickly. So how do you think about cleaning up the environment in that context, and talking to people about that?
As you said, there is a lot of change. I would first approach people with assuring them that they're not wrong, because there are things being added and changes being made to neighborhoods. And I think that it's not that folks don't want a better or more improved neighborhood. It's the fact that they weren't asked what they would want in their own neighborhoods. They were told, this is what you need, this is what the neighborhood needs. And people who've been living in the same neighborhood for umpteenth years, and not getting not being able to give adequate input on the changes to where they live, causes a big disparity in everything. And it's hard to appreciate something that you didn't even ask for. I think that by working with communities that are going through these changes, the best way to approach it is to try to explain why it's hard to do, but trying to explain why and helping those community members to know, helping them to figure out how their voices can be heard and who they need to speak with in order to have input on where they live. I think that that's the biggest thing. Things are happening. No one's really, in my opinion, no one's really trying to get the input from the community, or they are, but it's not in an accessible way. And so the community members are missing that piece of it, and that's where the anger and the frustration is coming from. So I would say making a more intentional effort to engage the people who live in the communities, asking them what it is that they would like to see, and maybe following those plans instead of telling them what they need and doing what you want.
I absolutely agree with that. We, in our conservation efforts, in anyone's conservation efforts, we can't get out ahead of the community. We have to be listening, we have to be responding to, we have to create opportunities for that input so that we understand what the community needs and what the community wants. And we can be responsive to that, because that's where all this has to start. Also, I commend the work of BBAR, the things they're doing in connection with the bridge, with things like the home buyers clubs and the efforts to promote local businesses. And they're really setting an example of how this social and economic agenda has to move along in lockstep with the sort of environmental work that we do, in order to ensure that the community, that the members of the community are in a position to make their own choices as the community changes. That they can remain in the community because they're supportive of the changes that are happening, and that they have the economic wherewithal to do that.
I think it can be a mistake to make improved amenities or improvements like the focus of the discourse around displacement, because a yoga studio doesn't force anybody to leave their neighborhood. A dog park doesn't displace anybody. People are displaced because housing is too expensive. So I think the focus really ought to be on housing policy, and without going off into a whole different topic, I think what we've been doing is not working. The city spends hundreds of millions of dollars to develop affordable housing, and in my view, they're lining the pockets of developers while creating housing that's not really affordable. So I think we need a whole new model, and in recent years, people have started talking about social housing, which is similar to public housing, but modeled on what they've done successfully a lot of places in Europe, because that's what it comes down to for me. But I should also mention that it is a dilemma when it comes to deforestation, because oftentimes when the developers go in and cut down a bunch of trees and say, well, we're going to build affordable housing. Well, of course, we have to question affordable for who and to what degree, and also, do you really have to put it there? Like, could you put your apartment building in this grassy area where you're not destroying tree canopy? Or could you, instead of new construction, could you rehabilitate this old building that's sitting there boarded up and decaying?
Going back to a couple of things that has already been said, so not just asking the community for input, but also allowing and giving space for them to be a part of the process and checking in to make sure that we're getting it right. I think that's where every organization should really, that should be their model. That should be the process. That not only are you starting, but they are driving the process. They are leading you. That is how your mission, that is how you decide what to focus on and where you invest the limited resources that you have. And so some of the ways that Building Bridges Across the River we've done that is by, once again, that I mentioned earlier was the Community Leadership Empowerment Workshops, which is CLEW. And so not only for people to be a part of our process, but empowering them to create their own process. And so when they see things happening or hear about something happening, instead of it just being something that they feel they only can share to their neighbor or friend, they can now rally people and know how to create change to either maybe pause or have people rethink and force them to hear them. And so I think those type of programs where we're not just allowing for the community to have input, but allowing them to drive the process and be empowered to lead even things that they find important are really going to make a huge difference. And I really do like what you said in regards to the housing piece and how once others and outside people find value in a space or neighborhood because it's been shifted and resources have been added, then that's when, like you said, the housing prices and different things cause change. And so, continuing to put efforts towards our, developing our community land trust so that there's permanent affordability for many generations to come, that people are able to afford and live in a space, but that still requires, I think that we've made really huge leaps with that, with over, I believe it's 222 properties and units and within DC, and since the short time that the Community Land Trust has been established. But I think we could do so much more if the policies and affordable housing initiatives really kind of lent itself to supporting something even more so. Like, we've received some support, but if that was more so the mindset, I think it could make a huge difference in allowing people to have the opportunity to stay in place and to enjoy the different changes that are happening or that they're even wanting to happen.
I want to talk about the vision here. What is the vision of a sustainable, resilient Ward 8 that you all are working toward? What does that look like?
Everyone looked at me. I'm going to take it on a very personal level. I am a native Washingtonian, and for me, seeing change sometimes does feel nice, it does feel good. And then at other times, it's starting to feel like it's not DC anymore. And so taking it from my professional standpoint, with the Bridge Park, my hope is that with collaboration and with residents and other people being able to really kind of be together and moving and making progress, my hope is that DC could still be recognizable to people. That would be the ideal vision. And so whether that's through the environmental justice efforts that are being made, whether that's through the housing efforts, I think we all want a place where we still feel like it's home, and it looks like home, it sounds like home, in positive ways, and that we still feel safe. We feel we can go outside and enjoy being outside and not feel like we're going to be sick or come back in and be sick from those things, but where we can truly embrace our neighborhood, even though changes have been made. So I think that for me, personally and professionally, that would be the ideal vision, is to have a space that we still call home with all these wonderful new amenities in place.
I wouldn't presume to articulate a vision for Ward 8. I don't live in Ward 8. The history of Ward 8 and the people of Ward 8 should shape and articulate that vision. But I do think that everybody has a fundamental right to a safe environment, to a safe, clean environment where they can breathe the air, where they can drink the water, and where they can take aesthetic and spiritual pleasure from a healthy environment, whether it's a stand of trees or whether it's a healthy place along the river. And I think that sort of aspiration, that sort of ambition for communities is pretty universal. And that's what all the organizations sitting here want to contribute to.
Yeah, I have to agree with my colleagues. I don't have much to add, but I think one thing that I want to agree, but one thing that I would add is that in my vision, the community members in Ward 8 see the environment as a tool, that they can lean back on the environment as a place where they can get a reset, and they're able to take that reset and propel them forward. And so I think with our work that all of us are doing, that's the kind of foundation that we're building, that we're using the environment as a social work tool. We're using the environment as a refresh tool. So that's what I would love to see, along with what you guys said.
That's well put.
Interesting example of the environment as a potential source of economic security is that a lot of people fish in the Anacostia. I was talking to one of my colleagues who fishes a lot and eats a lot of the fish, but we were talking to the Anacostia Riverkeeper, and he was talking about all the warnings about how you shouldn't eat certain species. You're not supposed to eat at all of fish, and other species you're supposed to eat only limited amounts because of the lead and the mercury and the PCBs and the other contaminants that are in that. So having a fishable river is not like, it's not this like aspirational thing, oh, it would be nice someday. It's like people are already doing that because that fish is a good meal that's free, and people have come to rely on that, but they are putting their health in danger by doing that. Or their health has been put in danger by the people who've caused that pollution historically, and a lot of times they don't even know it. So it's not so much about getting people to do things that they're not already doing, but it's actually making it so that they can do that in safety and health.
Yeah, that's a great example, and there are so many people fishing. I feel like, and it's such a joy to see people doing that, and then also like so sad on the other hand to think of like the fact that they can't do it safely.
Yeah, I mean, arguably somebody from the DC Department of the Environment or whatever should go out there and say, hey guys, enjoy fishing, but don't eat it. But nobody wants to do that. Like, and then what kind of response are they going to say? Well, I've been eating this fish for 30 years and I'm fine. Or, don't tell me not to eat it, because what else am I supposed to eat? So yeah, it is really sad. It's beautiful that people can feed themselves from the river, and it's sad that they have to put their health at risk in doing it.
I wanted to ask, like, how, and we talked about this a little bit, but how can residents, what role can residents play in what we've been talking about in terms of making it a resilient, sustainable ward?
I think definitely have like touched on that a lot, and so just reiterating that point of one, that the responsibility does not solely rely on residents. A lot of people did not create the issues that we see. But that does not mean that we all can't be a part of the process to make improvements. But I do think it's important to acknowledge the intentional policies and historical acts that have created the environment that we currently live in. And so to ask residents to make to take the lead in changing it, I don't think that's like where it necessarily should start, but I do believe that we all have the ability to do something. And so with that being said, beginning to really tap into some of these different resources that have been mentioned and being able to really start sharing those things, or just doing things on like a lower level, where when people see like Anacostia Park being used and really being valued and different things like that, the amount of dollars. Anacostia Park is a National Park Service of federal land, and you compare the amount of investment to Anacostia Park to something like the Washington Monument Space or other parks, it's drastically different. And so, is that a place where we can advocate together to make those improvements? And so really finding opportunities where you can join in to something that you believe in to bring attention or to create advocacy or to stop certain things from happening. So, like I said, I don't think that weight belongs on the shoulders of residents, but for those who do choose and want to be involved in that way, I think a lot of resources and opportunities that have been shared here today are really great things to get involved in.
So Anacostia Park is part of the National Park System. So is most of the parkland in DC, and that is not a good thing in my view. It is a legacy of the lack of home rule. When DC got home rule in 1974, Congress transferred some parkland over to DC, but the feds kept most of it, and that means that we don't have really control. It's like a distant bureaucracy, even though it's right over there in Foggy Bottom. They are not, if I want something fixed in my local park, I can't just call the DC government, 311, I can't call my ward council member, I have to call Congress. And we don't even have a full-blown voting member of Congress. So, DC government is not perfect. They have a lot of improvements to make when it comes to managing parkland. But I think if we had local control over more of our parkland, we would at least have a shot at being able to advocate effectively, instead of hoping that one day Congress will, allocate the many billions that are needed to make up the maintenance backlog and the thousands of Park Service sites throughout the country, where the urban parks tend to be kind of an afterthought.
It's an interesting question, what should residents of Ward 8 be doing? Because frankly, they're already doing so much. And I recognize and understand and embrace the point that you brought up, that folks are just trying to feed their families. How much time do they have to worry about the river? And yet they do. Somehow, on top of all the challenges that folks face in Ward 8, you folks do volunteer. You do show up at events like this. You do show up at community meetings. You do, put on the pressure where you need to try to make change. And I just want to recognize and celebrate that, because it is remarkable. And I would sort of turn the question around and say, what do we need to do to respond to that? How can our organizations, and speaking for myself, how can my organization be responsive to all the work that you all are doing? And some of it is the things we've talked about today. We need to center the community. We need to as you were saying, we need to put the community in leadership positions to sort of lead the effort to think through these issues and how we address them. And we need to do what we can do to provide resources to help you do this work. And one of the and we are, we each in our own way are equipped to help in some way. Whether it's helping to get your voices heard, whether it's helping you think through a technical problem, whether it's helping you by providing convenings and resources. There are contributions we can make, and so I guess if I would ask you to do anything, it would be to sort of hold our feet to the fire to provide these things, to let us know when we're, getting out ahead of ourselves, to let us know, how we can help, to let us know whether the work that we're doing is the work that really needs to get done and is really making the contributions that you need to be made. And so, when we reach out to you for guidance, help us out, help us chart the right course that creates the most benefit and has the most impact on the things that you all really care about. And I know that's asking a lot, because you're already doing so much, just living your lives and doing the things that you do. But we want to be contributors. We want to be a positive force in your communities, and we don't always know how to do that. And the more guidance we can get from you, I think the better it'll be for us to achieve our ends, and for you to achieve yours, and for us to identify some mutual things we want to work on together.
I think the most that we can ask of Ward 8 residents is to not give up hope, to not just shut down on us, the folks who are working to help with the improvements. I think all three of my colleagues up here are correct. The onus shouldn't just lay on the Ward 8 residents. They are mitigating factors that they can't change. It's more of a government, behind the scenes, red tape kind of things, and we all know about that because we live in DC. I think that the most that we can ask of Ward 8 residents is to not give up hope, to allow organizations like all of us who are up here to help illuminate the pathway of the things that they can do, and to, I know it's hard to say, but to trust that the folks who are invested in the well-being of Ward 8 will continue to be invested, and that we will continue to come to the residents for the guidance. Just please don't give up hope that things can get better.
And we started out talking about this investment of $100,000 from Wells Fargo. I want to ask, obviously money doesn't solve everything, but I liked your example of being able to hire a sixth park steward and do that work. What role does this kind of investment play in the work that you're doing addressing environmental justice and I guess that's my question. How can we leverage that investment, I guess?
Well, in our case, the generous contribution from Wells Fargo supported our Summer Environmental Academy, which is a no-cost summer camp, essentially, where middle school kids, in this case, could come out and just sort of spend the week doing something, fun and interesting at no cost, and also providing an opportunity to connect these kids with environmental issues, with the river particularly, and work to develop their their knowledge of what the possibilities are. What the possibilities are for hope for the river, but also what the possibilities are for, again, maybe a career in environmental conservation. Maybe we modeled sort of careers as teachers or as scientists or as academics or as engineers. So creating this sort of fun way to get kids out on the river, again, at no cost to them, and then provide them with all these sorts of learning opportunities. And we would love to use this, and this was a pilot for us, doing this in the summer, this sort of summer camp context. And it's really sort of opened up some exciting possibilities for us for more summer activities in the future.
The grant for us has helped to support 2 Friend Corps members, which is wonderful because that means that there are 2 more members of the community that is receiving workforce development training that is on a path to gaining sustainable employment that will definitely change the course of not only their lives but the community around them. Like we said earlier, once you know what the issue is, you have the time to address the issue, you will, because you take ownership of it. And so as these core members go through our program, it's workforce development, we're showing them a way that they can take all of the things that they've learned from being in our program through the environment, that they can use to move on to something that will take care of their family forever, something that they can pass down generation to generation. So we definitely appreciate that. It just, again, right back down to the human level of addressing what the needs are, and helping to mitigate those needs so that people can be able to move forward and give back. So
the funds that are invested in our Park Steward program yield a double benefit. Number one, it's money in the pocket of somebody that really needs it to be able to support their family, and then it's all the work that they accomplish as they're earning that money, remediating trash and invasive species. We're really thankful for this funding from Wells Fargo. A lot of the work that we're doing is helping to mitigate some of the worst effects of climate change. But as we know, the research points to the fact that the number one driver of climate change is the burning of fossil fuels. And unfortunately, Wells Fargo continues to be one of the largest funders of fossil fuel infrastructure. So I hope our friends who work at Wells Fargo will extend to the top brass as we're making those high-level business decisions our thanks for your support and your investment, but also the message that to really support environmental justice and the communities that are on the front lines of that, they need to stop supporting these extractive economies that are driving climate change and reinvest those funds in renewable and clean energy.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, I was going to do a shameless plug, so if you have a point to make.
Yeah, just, huge thank you to Wells Fargo for the support. And last year, I think it actually started a year more than the last year, but my years run together. But we started reaching out to the community to get information on, one, what is something missing from our original equitable development plan, which became health and wellness, and then from there, what are those strategies and what are things that we need to focus on. So fast forward to this year, we finally completed that process, and one of the things that came out of that was free access to workouts and things like that. And so for us, being able to implement something that the community asked for immediately after launching the health and wellness was really, one, a great win, but to be able to say, we took what you said and we've created this opportunity. And so we had our June workout series, which not only focused on physically working out, but it also provided a mental wellness piece. And so exposing people to things like forest bathing or ways that just left what we call your soul and your spirit in a better space than when you arrived. And also one of the wonderful things that our program manager decided to implement was the small business piece and create and those wellness businesses and connecting wellness businesses to the people that were attending the workout series. And so not only did the funds go to supporting the facilitators of the workout, which are local Ward 8 residents and businesses. They also had wellness products that we were able to give out as samples so people could get exposed to something they may not have tried before. So that supported small businesses within our community. And then in addition to the opportunity for free workouts. So for us, it allowed for, once again, going back to that individual piece, that individual being able to connect and find some healing and opportunities there, but also learn about some of the resources that are there. Friends of Anacostia Park was there every single was there for every single series, and that allowed for people to connect to ongoing things that are happening in the park and to stay later for the late skate or to learn how to fish even though you don't eat it. So it truly made a huge immediate impact, and we're looking forward to being able to do more along with our health and wellness pieces.
I think we're going to wrap up. We're running short on time here, but I just want to ask one last question and kind of briefly. But what do you hope people in the audience take away today? Like, what's kind of one message that you hope people will walk away with in terms of like something they can act on or think about?
Yeah, that question actually fits right in with my shameless plug. Scott mentioned at the outset, and I believe Jessica mentioned it too, that one of the elements of the Bridge Park, when it's completed, will be an environmental education center that will be run by AWS. And we're very excited about that. And one of the reasons we're excited about it is because, as Scott will tell you, about 1,000 community meetings were held as to talk about what people wanted out of this Bridge Park project. And one of the things that came out of those meetings very dramatically was folks wanted an environmental education center. They wanted a facility there that would connect folks with the river and help identify and inspire and educate the next generation of conservation stewards. We've sort of picked up that ball and run with it, and we're thinking about this sort of threefold vision of the Environmental Education Center as an education center, as a community center, and as a center for excellence for river conservation. But that's just sort of the vision that we're putting on the brochures right now. What we really need is, if y'all could indulge us with a few more meetings, is we want to come to all of you and find out what you would like to see in terms of programming for this Environmental Education Center, both in terms of our education programs, our community outreach programs, community activities. The space is really remarkable. There's classrooms. There's sort of a big general multi-purpose space where you can do all sorts of interesting things. There's going to be a place for local art, either permanent installations or rotating installations. So there's all sorts of really interesting things we can do with this space. And I think that this space is frankly a really good opportunity to try to do some of the things we've talked about here today in terms of sort of putting the community in the lead, in terms of thinking about, how we want to program this space, how we want to use that space. So, you all and the community at large will be hearing from us about, ways that we can learn from you about what would be the most beneficial use of this really remarkable space that's going to be on the Bridge Park.
My one thing I guess would be for the takeaway would be that, really accepting that we can't do it all, but we all can do something. Like, there is something that each of us can contribute, and our contribution is valuable, and needed. And so I would encourage anyone who is here or who ends up like hearing this recording to not feel just overwhelmed and kind of hopeless because of what they see in their environment and around them, but find that one thing that you can do and you can control to make a small difference, because I believe that small difference can have a ripple effect that can make really big impact.
I agree with Jessica. I would say that my one takeaway would be to bring environmental justice down to a human form, to not think of it in a way that's so huge that, especially in our communities, that it affects us on a more human, more personal level, and to keep that in mind when addressing the issues in Ward 8.
I can't pick one thing, but I will mention something that you're going to be hearing about in the years to come. One of the sort of structural solutions to trash pollution that we're working on is bottle redemption. There are 11 states where you pay a fee when you buy a drink, and you get that money back when you recycle it. And in those states, there is far less litter on the ground. There is a far higher rate of recycling. And in many cases, if there are people who don't care about the 10 cents and do throw it on the ground, there are other people who can actually make a living by picking those up. In New York City, there are thousands of people who support themselves by collecting other people's cans. And this has been proposed in DC before. The beverage industry doesn't like it. The plastic and fossil fuel industries don't like it. But it is in the best interest of the people and the environment. So that's something we're really going to be pushing for. You should look up 3R for DC Coalition.
Here, here. And I'd like to add something other than my shameless plug, and that is one of the most important things I've heard today in this discussion is to hold on to hope and to not give in to despair on some of these issues. You know, I'm not a you know, social justice is really important to what we do, but you know, I come out of a environmental conservation background. I mean, that's what I've been doing my whole career. But there's a lot of similarities between, you know, fighting for social justice and fighting for environmental restoration and protection. And one of them is the constant need for hope. You know, throughout my life, I've run into environmental challenges that, and you're just sort of faced with a host of, you know, trends and statistics and reasons why what you're doing is not going to be successful. But you just have to believe that that's not true, and you have to find the path to getting where you need to go through all of that that weather that's blowing in your face. So this notion about, you know, don't give in to despair and remain hopeful that that you're going to get there in the end, I think is vitally important to environmental justice, to environmental conservation, to everything we've been talking about today.
That's a good note to end on. Well, yeah, thank you all. It's been really, really interesting. What? One or two questions in the audience? Yeah, audience questions.
I have a question. Hello, thank you. I just want to say thank you all for having this. This is a great panel. Thank you, Scott, and the whole Living Street Park. I would say how you, and I loved from the Friends of Anacostia Park, when you were talking about how, you know, meeting the needs of the community before you can ask them to do anything. So I wanted to know, how are you all collaborating with like with, you know, Pepco and gas companies and water companies to promote and market how, you know, these people can save money. I think the thing about this environmental justice is, you know, when you're marketing this to the community, they also want to know how to get money, but they want to know how to save money. And a way that you can market this is, okay, if you do this and cut off your lights, you can, you know, you're saving money. But I would love, and how you were talking about how was the communication. I would love to see, to get my Pepco bill, because we all get them, how I can save money through environmental justice on my bill. How can I, on my water, on this, and all those things, because we all get those bills and they all come, and we're not, you know, like I went to graduate from FLU. I was one of the graduates, and thank you for this. I'm in a transition, so the last 16 months, I haven't had any income from $100,000 to zero. So taking this course is volunteer, and then we were talking about, you know, you're volunteering, like you're not getting paid. But I want to thank CLU because, you know, they offered like childcare stipend because they didn't have childcare, and they had like a gift card, and I was like, oh my God, I don't have any gas in my car. You know, this is great. So those little stipends or whatever you all do to help people out when they volunteer is just great. But back to that, like back to what I was saying about the income. How are you marketing how they can save money?
So I think it's not for us necessarily the marketing aspect, because that's a bit out of scope for us. But it's identifying opportunities where we can just communicate directly. And so one of the things that everyone will probably hear a little bit more about is our like condo rehabilitation program that's working with some of the really like long-term residents who live in older buildings, and their the fees aren't really enough to sustain or repair buildings, and so they're kind of in disrepair and a bad shape. So it's not just saying like, okay, let's figure this out, but it's bringing in partners who can also help with getting solar panel, changing certain things to electric, which, for example, the stove. What I've learned from APAC was that gas stoves actually really increase the opportunity for things like asthma and different breathing issues, but everyone doesn't have the ability, just like, oh, I'm gonna go get a new stove. So when these opportunities present themselves, not just doing things the way we've done it, but taking and implementing, for example, electric stoves and being able to do solar panel, which anyone who has had the opportunity to have a solar panel, you realize the huge difference in savings that can happen on that lower everyday level. So for us, it's not necessarily being able to speak from like that space, but it is being able to communicate and also providing opportunity for people to share those different resources that become available through different corporations and things.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. How like if I get my Pepco bill, I would like to say, here, see, well, you know, you can get solar panels for free if you're a DC resident. Like if I have it on my bill, I'm like, oh my God, I can do that. Oh, I can get a free stove, because I only learned that going through FLU. I did not know anything about that. And
Yeah.
so the communication of these free resources or no, and I know it may be funding. You don't want to advertise because of funding, I don't know. But people need to know that. People need to know, I need a new stove. How can I get a new stove? Oh, I can get it for free.
I think that's one of the good things too about building bridges across the river as a whole. And so we talk about the 11th Street Bridge Park and the opportunities that are currently happening and it presents, but the ARC, I believe by next year will be its 20th anniversary, and it's been an opportunity for a community space of gathering. But with saying that, it has been an opportunity for people to come and communicate those different things of free solar, free, stove switch and things like that. So DC government does offer a lot of different things, and like you said, being able to take what's out there and connect it to people and people knowing about it. I think Building Bridges Across the River has, over the 20 years, really been great at creating that opportunity and getting people right here in the community versus you having to go downtown or go on the internet to find the information, meeting people where they are. So hopefully, as those resources continue to become available, we will still be a place where people will come to learn and to experience that. And even just our own programming, like our Food and Farm Fridays, which is free food from our farms and our Bridge Park plots that's handed out, and the word continues to spread. So this space itself is it's not just a community gathering spot, but it also, I think, is an opportunity for information sharing too.
Anyone else?
Should I use a microphone?
Sure, yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for this discussion. I work at the Phillips Collection over here and run art-related projects, but I'm really interested in environmental projects too. And I wanted to ask, just thinking about it from a perspective of looking at Ward 7 and 8 from an asset perspective of how there are really beautiful parks in the neighborhoods, and we have the Anacostia Trail where like biking is possible, and like I bike that trail like almost every week, which is amazing. We have Fort DuPont parks, which also have like insanely amazing bike trails. How I feel like it works both ways. That yes, things need to be fixed in Ward 7 and 8, but how do we also create the conversation that people from other areas should be coming towards 7 and 8 to embrace these things that are already there? So it not only like amplifies the environmental issues, but it also creates enterprise within the communities where people are going to the bike parks and going to Anacostia River Park and then going for a coffee afterwards. So it brings money into the communities. Like, what are ways that we can use the environment to uplift the community in that way? And what are like concrete steps that can get us there? I live in Ward 7 also, so I'm interested in that.
Does anyone?
I think it's maybe doing what you're already doing, which is you're out enjoying these trails and enjoying these beautiful spaces that are in Ward 7 and 8, and taking that and promoting it, because we're gonna promote it. We're gonna say, come down to the park, look at these beautiful trails. We're gonna say, do a river tour. You know, we're gonna say, come down. It's here. But I think it takes the word of mouth of people like you who utilize these spaces and enjoy them to be able to tell folks who aren't familiar with the spaces, hey, go check out the Anacostia River Trail, go check out the park or the river. It's a great space. And then while you're down there, visit this local coffee shop or visit this local small business. I think that is the first, should be the first step for people who are familiar with the area and enjoy utilizing the resources, is to spread the word about the area and the beautiful resources. As organizations, we're going to already do that, and we're going to amplify the beauty of the park, the beauty of the river, but it'll be great if folks are also on the sideline saying, yes, they're right, come on down. So
Yeah, I
Something
agree.
we do a lot with our Park Steward program is, as part of our training program, we take the park stewards just out to visit all of these places that a lot of times are near, where they've lived for a long time, but they maybe haven't been to see. And so we're trying to turn them into ambassadors and cheerleaders for the greenery and the resources that we have here already.
I can't count the number of times I've taken folks on a boat tour of the Anacostia, and it's revelatory. People look around and they say, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even know this was here," And when we go upriver to where it looks sort of wild and natural, people are amazed that they're still in D.C. and they're in this sort of wild, natural area. It really works just to get folks down to the river, and I don't know if anybody's doing this already, but some sort of a land-based tour like that provided the opportunity to go visit these wonderful public spaces, natural spaces in Ward 7 and 8, I think would have the same impact. For example, a few years back, I went to Fort DuPont Park for the first time for a volunteer event, and I marveled at it. It's a wonderful place that a lot of people in the district don't know about. So maybe some sort of more premeditated effort, to get people on a minibus and take them out to show them these great spaces. I think there'd be a real multiplier effect to that.
I was just gonna say, I did there's a half marathon Juneteenth race that went along the Fort Circle Park. So I think you mentioned Fort DuPont, but it was very cool because there was like hundreds of people doing a foot race along these trails, which often are not so busy. And I think there were a lot of people who weren't from the neighborhoods who maybe were on those trails for the first time. I thought that was a neat way to get people to come and sort of experience nature, sort of organized events like that.
I was going to say just promoting, because these events already happen and exist, and that is the intention. So for example, for the Anacostia River Festival, our intention is one, to get people to engage with the river, also to learn about our different partners that are already doing this work, and then we add another layer by shutting down, which was formerly Good Hope Road, now Marionberry Avenue, so that local businesses can set up there, and then people who are visiting the festival can also just go right there and experience those different small businesses. So we are already tying those things together, of the economic and small business opportunities that are here. And one of the key pieces for the River Festival is to amplify the voices, the history, and also the beauty that already exists. Like, a lot of people talk about the change, but right now already there's a lot of beauty and natural resources and value that is right here. And so it's just continuing to share all of these different ways that you experience it and with others, and to highlight that, because I think that's the real difficulty sometimes, is reaching folks.
Cool. All right.
I'd like to thank you all for being here today. Let's give the panelists and the moderator, Jacob. Thank Wells for making this investment in a more sustainable and resilient sort of Ward 8. We encourage everyone to, I think if folks have a minute, to come up and have conversations with folks. Again, if you have been here before, welcome back. If you've not been here before, we invite you to come back on October 19th for a Taste of the Harvest. For the first time, it's happening all in Oxon Run. It's going to be beautiful, like a sit-down dinner for 500 people. It's going to be really special, and roasting s'mores under the stars. It's going to be really great. But thanks so much for coming out. Thanks again to each of you for a discussion. I know I'm leaving today with a little more hope, and I hope you do too. So thanks so much. Appreciate it.